Welcome to your online written composition certification video. In this video we will review the score sheet and quick tips on how to effectively evaluate students' work. After completion of this video, you will be required to take a short quiz in the class marker system. Once you have completed the quiz, you will receive your composition certification number. The composition score sheet has been updated to more objectively evaluate student work. On the cover page, make sure you insert your section number, division, competition level, reader code and certification number once received. Enter the 3-digit book number in the column that says Booklet Code, then select the corresponding tab at the bottom of the page to start scoring the individual booklet. Students' compositions will be evaluated in 3 sections: Analytic Content, Holistic Part 1 Evaluations and Holistic Part 2 Conventions. In the Analytics section you will evaluate how effectively the student has developed each portion of an argumentative essay. The Analytic Content section contains descriptor boxes for each portion of the composition. You will need to match which descriptor box most accurately describes the essay portion being scored. For example, if the essay does not include a hook in the introduction, assign the essay a score of 1 in the drop-down menu to the right. On the other hand, if the student successfully engages the reader by using an effective hook, as outlined in descriptor box 4, assign the hook a score of 4 in the descriptor box to the right. Continue scoring all portions of the analytic content section. This includes the introduction, thesis, body, counterargument and conclusion. The analytic score sheet for our elementary writers is a bit different. Those students will receive scores for the introduction, opinion statement, body, elaboration and conclusion. Next, we will begin scoring the holistic evaluation section. In this section you will use the descriptor boxes to evaluate elements such as purpose, audience, voice and strategies. Holistic Part 1 offers a 2-number scoring range. Once you have selected the descriptor box that most accurately describes the essay, choose either the higher or lower number based on the degree to which the essay accomplishes the descriptor. Once you have assigned a score for each portion in Holistic Part 1, you will need to justify your score in the comments section. This will allow the student to see and grow from your feedback. The last section to be scored is Holistic Part 2 Conventions. This section looks at grammar, correctness, sentence variety and vocabulary. Assign all scores for Holistic Part 2. Make sure that the descriptor box score you select accurately describes the composition being scored. Score all of Holistic Part 2 sections and assign a score. Make sure that you leave comments that will allow students to learn and improve their writing. Once you have completed scoring for all compositions and filled out the comments sections, you will see an overall score and ranking appear on the first page of the score sheet. Before submitting the score sheet, ensure that the Review tab is completely green. If not, this means that there is a missing score or comments section for one of the compositions you have scored. The example shows that Book 2 is missing feedback. In this portion of the composition certification video, we will review an example of a student composition scored with the updated score sheet. Please take a moment to pause the video, so that you may read the following student essay in its entirety. The prompt for this essay deals with whether or not students should be allowed to have iPods in the classroom. This is part 2 of the student essay. First, we will look at the essay scored by the analytic evaluation section. The hook section measures how effectively the student is able to set the tone for the purpose and engage the reader. The hook used in this example is better than weak or irrelevant. This puts it higher than the to box. However, the hook is somewhat generic and only moderately engages the reader, thus, it receives a score of 3. The next section is the claim, and it will be measured by how well the student develops an argument about the topic, and supports that argument with outside information. The example shown here makes an argumentative claim about iPods. This moves it past the 1 box. However, the claim is somewhat general and limited information is provided, thus, the claim should be scored as 2. Next, we will look at the relevance of the thesis statement, and how well the points of the thesis are defined throughout the essay. This thesis statement is a bit confusing in the argument it is attempting to convey. However, the thesis is relevant, moving it past the 1 box, into the 2 box. This composition attempts to define the thesis with points, pushing it higher than the 1 box. However, many of the points are not appropriate to the purpose of the essay, thus the score of 2 is assigned. Next, we will look to evaluate the effectiveness of idea transitions and idea development within the body of the essay. The student sometimes uses transitions between ideas. However, these transitions are ineffective or inappropriate in contributing to the coherency of the essay, thus the score assigned should be a 2. The author attempts to develop the ideas from the thesis, making this portion better than a 1. However, the ideas are underdeveloped with little supporting evidence to advance the claim, thus, the score assigned should be a 2. The counter-argument section will evaluate how well the author considers opposing viewpoints, and how well they develop a logical rebuttal. The essay includes a counter-argument, thus it must be scored higher than a 1. The counter-argument is correct, therefore it must be scored higher than a 2. The counter-argument is weak because it offers minimal explanation and should be scored a 3. The essay does include a rebuttal, and should be scored higher than a 1. However, the rebuttal does little to convince the reader that the main argument is correct, and thus should be scored as 2. The final section of the analytic scoring portion is the conclusion. In this section we will evaluate the author's ability to refocus on the purpose, and their ability to present an effective call to action. The author includes a conclusion, therefore the score must be higher than a 1. However, the student merely restates the points highlighted throughout the essay, and thus receives a score of 2. The essay provides a call to action, however the call to action is very weak, and does not initiate a strong consideration of the essay's message, thus a score of 2 should be assigned. We will now look at the holistic Part 1 evaluation section. Here we will score the author's purpose, audience, voice, and use of strategies. Unlike the analytic evaluation section, in the holistic evaluation, we will assign scores based on the entire essay, and not individual sections. In the purpose section, we will look to evaluate how well the author demonstrates the qualities of an argumentative essay, and how deeply that argument resonates with the reader. The author fails to leave an emotional or logical impact on the reader, and displays minimal qualities of an argument, therefore, the score assigned should be a 4. The next section to be scored is audience. In this section we will measure how effectively the author addresses the concerns of the audience, includes compelling evidence in support of their claim, and offers a persuasive counterargument. This essay includes mostly relevant content, and offers a counter-argument, thus the score must be higher than the 3 or 4 box, since the counter-argument is weak, and only some of the audience's concerns are addressed, the score assigned should be 5. The next section to be scored is voice. In this section we will evaluate how well the student uses appropriate tone, and a distinct voice throughout the essay. In this essay, the student maintains a mostly consistent tone and voice throughout the essay. In many cases, the tone is somewhat inappropriate, and thus the score assigned should be a 5. The last section of Holistic Part 1 is Strategies. In this section we will evaluate how effectively the student uses rhetorical devices to persuade the reader, and support the argument. The essay uses some rhetorical devices appropriately. This moves the score above the 1 or 2 box. However, the rhetorical strategies used are often ineffective, and thus the assigned score should be a 4. The last section of the score sheet is Holistic Part 2, Conventions. In this section, student work will be graded for grammar, correctness, sentence variety, and vocabulary. In the grammar section, we will evaluate the extent to which the student makes grammatical mistakes, and how those mistakes affects the coherency of the essay. This essay makes some grammatical mistakes. However, the meaning of the essay is mostly maintained, and thus the score assigned should be a 3. In this example, you can see that the student uses a misplaced modifier. The student means that the teacher's voice will be filled with joy and satisfaction. However, they mistakenly state that the iPod will be filled with these things. The next section that we will score is correctness. We will measure the student's ability to correctly use capitalization, punctuation, and spelling. The student does not make mistakes consistently throughout the essay, thus the score must be higher than a 2. However, some mistakes do exist, although the essay's meaning is mostly maintained, thus the score assigned should be a 3. In this example, you can see that the student makes several punctuation mistakes. However, although these mistakes are common, they do not interfere with the meaning of the essay, and is the justification for the score of 3. The sentence variety section will measure how effectively the student is able to use a variety of sentence types and structures to convey their overall argument. In this essay, the student is able to use a variety of sentence types, including simple, compound, and complex. This moves the score above the 2 box. However, in some cases the sentence types used creates awkwardness, thus the essay should score a 3. Here are examples from the essay that portrays awkwardness generated from sentence type. In the top example, the dependent clause, anticipating their explosion of help to you, is extremely awkward, and causes a break in the reading momentum. The last component to be scored is vocabulary. This section will analyze how well the student is able to use high-level vocabulary to increase the overall impact of the essay. For majority of the essay, the student uses grade-appropriate vocabulary. The writer does not demonstrate the ability to use higher-level word choice throughout the essay. Thus, the score assigned should be a 2. Lastly, beginning this year, topic descriptors will be posted on the KAAC website at the beginning of the season for all composition competitions. This example shows the topic descriptor for the district competition. Since students will now have the opportunity to research each composition topic, it is expected that they are able to effectively develop their ideas with outside information. The analytic evaluation section for our elementary writers is a bit different from the high school and middle grade score sheet. However, Holistic Part 1 and 2 are the same for all 3 levels. The first difference that we will see is the opinion statement. The elementary curriculum teaches students to develop opinion statements and not a thesis. The opinion statements will be graded on how well these students can generate an opinion on the given prompt, and then support that opinion with logical points. The next difference between the 2 score sheets is the counter-argument. Elementary students will not be scored on their ability to develop an effective counter-argument or rebuttal. Here, You can see that elementary writers will be scored on personal reflections. These should be personal insights or connections that the students use to strengthen the overall impact of their opinion, and can occur anywhere throughout the essay. The last difference between the two score sheets is the conclusion section. In this section, our elementary writers are not expected to include a call to action. In the conclusion, our elementary writers will be scored on how well they are able to refocus on the purpose by summarizing their key points and offering a thought-provoking final statement. It is important that we are conscious of the level that we are scoring. Elementary students will not yet have the language command or sophistication that older students have, and thus should not be scored on the same difficulty level. Thank you for all that you do, and good luck in the upcoming season.